The night was still, the kind of stillness that only stretches across lonely highways when the city lights fade in the rearview mirror. The hum of tires against asphalt was the only sound inside the black Ford F-150 as it cut through the dark. Behind the wheel sat Marcus Reed, a man who carried himself with quiet precision. His suit was too sharp, his demeanor too calm, his eyes too watchful to match the small-town Georgia road he traveled. Then, red and blue lights erupted in the mirror. A siren wailed once, short and commanding. Marcus slowed, his hands steady as he guided the truck toward the shoulder. Dust rose, swirling in the glow of headlights. The patrol car came to a hard stop. A door slammed. Out stepped Officer Bradley Kane, a man with a swagger sharpened by years of unchecked authority. He adjusted his belt, rested a hand on the holster, and approached with a smirk that carried no hint of courtesy. "License and registration," Kane barked, before Marcus could even roll the window down fully. Marcus complied without a word, movements slow, deliberate, careful. But Kane wasn't watching the license. His eyes swept the interior, scanning, measuring. Then he leaned in just enough for Marcus to smell the faint trace of tobacco on his breath. "You've been driving a little too clean tonight," Kane said flatly. "Makes me think you're hiding something." Before Marcus could answer, Kane motioned to the back seat. A second cruiser pulled in behind them. Another officer stepped out, but remained in the shadows, waiting, watching. Kane opened the driver's side door without permission. "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus obeyed. His face gave nothing away. His silence was unnerving, though Kane mistook it for fear. The officer crouched, slid a hand beneath the driver's seat, and pulled out a small, clear bag. White powder inside caught the beam of a flashlight. Kane grinned. "Well, well, what do we have here?" He held the bag up, letting the dust sparkle in the night air. "Looks like you're going away for a long time, Mr. Reed." Marcus's eyes narrowed, but his voice was steady, almost too steady. He looked Kane directly in the eye and whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "He really has no idea who I am." And just like that, the balance shifted, though only Marcus understood it. "Before we go any further, let me ask you this. If you were in Marcus's shoes, facing a crooked cop, a planted bag of drugs, and a night that could erase your freedom, would you keep silent, or would you fight back?" Hit the subscribe button now and comment your answer below, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything about power, justice, and who really holds control when the lights flash behind you. Kane dangled the plastic bag like a trophy, shaking it just enough for the powder to shift inside. His smile widened as if the case had already been closed, the trial already over, and Marcus Reed's future already sealed. The second officer stepped closer, his boots crunching against gravel. He stayed quiet, his hand resting near his holster, as though the sight of Marcus standing calmly in the darkness was itself a threat. Neither man asked questions. Neither cared for answers. The decision, in their eyes, had already been made. Marcus stood motionless, his wrists heavy, as Kane snapped handcuffs around them. The sharp click echoed through the night. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. His face betrayed nothing. And yet, behind the stillness of his eyes, calculations were unfolding, rapid, exact, impossible for Kane to read. The air was thick with unspoken truths. Kane thought he had just caught another nameless man, a number to add to his record, another victory he could boast about down at the station. But Marcus knew better. He had spent years learning to see patterns, to watch without revealing, to let men bury themselves with arrogance. And then, Marcus's phone buzzed. Kane sneered. "Who's calling you at a time like this?" He pulled the phone from Marcus's pocket, intending to shut it off, but his eyes caught on the screen for just a moment. One message glowed beneath the glass. "Daddy, don't forget my recital tonight. 7 p.m. Front row seat." The smile slipped from Kane's face, just for an instant, but he quickly regained it. "Looks like you're going to miss a lot more than a school concert." He pocketed the phone with a casual cruelty, as if the message had meant nothing, But to Marcus, it meant everything, a reminder of what was at stake, a reminder of what he could not afford to lose. The second officer shifted uneasily, glancing at the dash of the cruiser. A faint red light blinked in rhythm, unnoticed, ignored. The dash cam had been recording since the moment Kane turned on his lights. Every word, every action, every planted piece of evidence, captured, silent, patient, waiting. Kane shoved Marcus toward the hood of the truck, face down, hands flat. Marcus complied, his forehead pressing against cool metal, his breath steady despite the pressure on his back. His inner voice was calm, controlled, but edged with steel. "I've stood in war rooms. I've outplayed cartel leaders. I've seen fear in the eyes of men far more dangerous than this one. And yet, here I am, pinned by arrogance, framed by corruption. How far do I let this play out?" The cuffs bit into his wrists. The headlights painted the lonely road in harsh white, and in that moment, Marcus Reed, the man who had sent entire crime families to prison, stood accused like any other victim of the system. Kane leaned close, his whisper sharp and cold. "Men like you disappear every day in towns like this. Nobody asks questions. Nobody cares." Marcus lifted his head just enough for the officer to see the fire in his eyes. And though he spoke barely above a whisper, the weight of his words cut deeper than any shout. "You'll regret every second of this." What Kane didn't realize, what neither of them realized, was that Marcus Reed wasn't who he seemed. He wasn't just a driver pulled over on a lonely Georgia road. He wasn't just a father rushing home to see his daughter's recital. Marcus Reed was the man they should never have touched, the man who had the power to bring their entire world crashing down. And before the night was over, the roles of hunter and hunted would shift in ways they could never imagine. The cocaine sat on the hood of the truck, its presence as damning as a gavel strike in a courtroom. Officer Bradley Kane tapped the bag with one finger, his grin never fading. To him, it wasn't just evidence, it was power. "Open and shut case," he muttered, glancing toward the younger officer who had been standing guard. "You'll be writing this one up in the morning. Another dealer off the streets." The younger man, Officer Daniels, shifted uneasily. His eyes lingered on Marcus longer than they should have, his jaw tightening as if a war was being fought inside his head. Daniels wasn't as seasoned, nor as hardened. He saw details Kane ignored: the pressed cuffs of Marcus's shirt, the tailored fit of his jacket, the calmness in his posture that no guilty man could carry under these circumstances. Still, he said nothing. Marcus studied both men in silence. He knew Kane's type. Men who wore the badge not to serve, but to dominate. Men who fed off the fear of others. Kane saw Marcus as a prize to parade, a black man in a nice truck with cocaine, discovered under the seat. The picture painted itself. In Kane's mind, the narrative would play out exactly as he intended. A headline in the local paper, another arrest to his name, another mark of authority he could wield. But Marcus also knew Daniels's type, the silent observer, the kind of man who hadn't yet decided whether he would follow the corruption or break under its weight. And if Marcus played this correctly, Daniels's hesitation might be the only thread that could unravel Kane's scheme. "Where were you headed tonight?" Kane demanded, his tone more mocking than curious. "Home," Marcus answered calmly. "Home," Kane repeated with a laugh. "Sure. And I suppose that suit is just your casual Friday look, huh? Men like you don't belong behind the wheel of trucks like this, and they definitely don't keep their noses clean." The jab wasn't subtle. Race, class, status. Kane stacked them without care, confident that no one would ever challenge him. But Marcus kept his composure. His voice was steady, his expression unreadable. Inside, however, calculations shifted again. He weighed the cost of silence against the consequences of exposure. He couldn't reveal who he was. Not yet. Too much was at stake. But each second of restraint felt like an iron chain pulling tighter around his chest. Officer Daniels finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm enough to cut through Kane's arrogance. "Brad, Maybe we should call this in. Run his ID through the system before—" Kane snapped his head around, glaring at his partner. "You questioning me, rookie? You think I don't know what I'm doing?" Daniels faltered, his lips parting but no words following. He looked away, ashamed of his hesitation. Kane turned back to Marcus. "See? My partner here? He's still learning how the world works. He thinks men like you get the benefit of the doubt. But I've been doing this long enough to know better. You people always slip up eventually. Tonight just happens to be your night." The words cut sharp. Daniels flinched, but Marcus's face never changed. His calmness was infuriating to Kane, who fed on fear and submission. He wanted panic. He wanted denial. He wanted Marcus to break. But instead, he got silence, and that silence held more power than Kane realized. The bag of cocaine sat between them, the symbol of Kane's certainty, the symbol of Marcus's trap. Kane leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear. "Nobody cares who you are. Out here, I write the story, and when the cuffs close, your life belongs to me." Marcus turned his head slowly, meeting Kane's stare with an intensity that froze the air between them. His voice, when he finally spoke, was measured, calm, icy. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Two men stood under flashing lights that night, one who believed he held absolute power, and another who knew the truth was only a phone call away. But in a battle like this, power doesn't stay in one set of hands for long. The night was far from over, and the first cracks in Kane's plan were already beginning to show. The cuffs locked into place, their metallic bite cutting into Marcus's wrists. Kane pushed him against the hood of the truck with the practiced force of a man who enjoyed the sound of compliance. Gravel shifted under boots, headlights carved harsh shadows, and the night thickened with silence. Then, a faint vibration. The phone in Kane's pocket buzzed. He frowned, pulling it out with irritation. A single notification glowed across the cracked glass. "Daddy, don't forget my recital tonight. 7 p.m., front row seat." Kane read it aloud with mocking amusement, his tone dripping with cruelty. "Well, well, Mr. Reed, looks like you had big plans tonight. Guess what? You're not making it." He chuckled, slipping the phone back into his pocket as though the words of a 12-year-old girl were nothing but noise. But for Marcus, that message was no noise. It was an anchor. It was Alicia's voice echoing through the darkness, a reminder of why he endured, why he swallowed his anger, why he let this game play out. Every mission, every risk, every sleepless night, he had promised himself that he did it for her. Now, as his daughter stood backstage at a middle school auditorium, clutching her violin and scanning the front row for her father, Marcus was trapped against the hood of a truck on a highway shoulder, framed by the very men sworn to protect. The weight of that reality pressed harder than the officer's grip on his back. Kane leaned in close, his whisper sharp enough to cut. "You think anyone out here cares about your kid's recital? About you? About any of this?" He shook the bag of cocaine again. "This is all they'll ever see. A man, a truck, and a felony. Everything else? Doesn't matter." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, letting the words settle, but not break him. He inhaled, slow, deliberate. His inner voice steadied itself against the cruelty. He thinks this is about a bag of powder. He thinks this is about a late-night stop. He doesn't see the wires connecting everything. He doesn't see how small he is in a web too large for him to control. And if I endure this, if I let him believe in his power just a little longer, I can rip that web apart at its center. The second officer, Daniels, shifted again. His unease was growing heavier with each passing moment. His eyes flickered toward Marcus, then back to Kane. He had seen guilty men before. He had seen liars, hustlers, addicts. Marcus was none of those things, and Daniels knew it. Yet fear kept him silent. The dash cam blinked on, recording faithfully, unseen. Its red light pulsed like a heartbeat in the shadows, small, unnoticed, but alive. Kane pressed harder on Marcus's shoulder. "Face it, Reed. Tonight your story ends. Tomorrow you'll be a headline, and nobody's going to remember the man behind it. Just another number. Just another case." Marcus lifted his head slightly, his voice low, calm, and unshaken. "You're wrong." Kane laughed, mistaking quiet confidence for delusion. "Am I?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Because stories don't end the way you think, not when the truth is stronger than the lie." For the first time, Daniels looked directly at Marcus, the faintest flicker of doubt crossing his face. The phone buzzed again. A second message. Kane didn't bother to read it this time, but Marcus didn't need to see it. He already knew what it said. His daughter was waiting, and the longer Kane played his game, the closer Marcus came to deciding how far he was willing to go to end it. The night had become more than a routine stop. It was now a collision of power, loyalty, and truth. And as Marcus stood handcuffed beside his own truck, one decision pressed harder than the cuffs themselves: reveal who he truly was, or let the corruption dig deeper, until the line between justice and survival snapped forever. The night pressed heavier, the cuffs still biting, and Kane's laughter still circling like a predator that had found its prey. But what Kane didn't know was that he wasn't alone. A faint red blink, almost invisible, pulsed on the dashboard of his cruiser. It blinked with steady rhythm, recording each word, each movement, each cruel taunt. The dashcam, forgotten by the arrogant officer, had already begun its quiet work. It captured the slam of the hood, the bag of cocaine being theatrically waved in the air, the tone of Kane's mocking voice. Every frame was being stored, silently, beyond his notice. Daniels noticed, though. His eyes shifted toward that tiny red light, and for the briefest moment, guilt washed across his face. He knew what it meant. He knew this wasn't just a stop anymore. It was evidence. Evidence that could destroy everything if it ever reached the right hands. Kane, too full of himself, never turned his head. He believed the world existed only in the inches in front of him. The man pinned to a truck, the bag of powder in his grip, the badge on his chest. He didn't see beyond it. He didn't think about the way technology remembered what men forgot. Marcus, however, did. He caught the faint reflection of the blinking light in the windshield. His mind sharpened instantly. There it is, the silent witness, the one thing he can't bully, can't intimidate, can't bend. He thinks he controls the story, but this is the thread that can unravel it all. Kane shoved him again. "Look at you, acting calm like this isn't the end of the road. You should be begging, Reed. You should be praying I don't haul you into county tonight." Marcus didn't flinch. His eyes stayed fixed, not on Kane, but on the cruiser, on that small flicker of light. The irony struck him. Kane was framing a man who lived in shadows of secrecy, unaware that his own arrogance had invited a camera to frame him. Daniels shifted uncomfortably. His voice, quiet, almost reluctant, cut through the stillness. Kane, maybe we should, log the evidence first. Standard procedure." Kane shot him a glare, the kind that warned subordinates not to step out of line. "Procedure?" he sneered. "You think I don't know how to run my own stop? Relax. This guy's done." But Daniels's eyes kept darting between Marcus and the cruiser. Something about Reed unsettled him. Something about his composure, about the calm in the face of humiliation. Daniels had seen fear before. It screamed, it begged, it sweated through shirts and shook through hands. Marcus had none of it. Inside, Marcus's thoughts tightened like a coiled spring. Patience. The camera is my shadow tonight. The longer he talks, the deeper he digs. The deeper he digs, the more the truth buries him. But the question remains, when do I reveal who I am? Too soon, and the trap snaps shut on me. Too late, and Alicia plays her violin to an empty chair. The highway stretched on, eerily quiet. Cars passed in the distance, their headlights slicing through the darkness but never slowing, never stopping. To them, it was just another routine stop, just another black man pulled over on a lonely stretch of road. None of them saw the storm beneath it. Kane smirked, leaning in close again. "This is your last free breath, Reed. After tonight, you're nobody." But as the dashcam blinked, unseen but awake, Marcus thought to himself, "No, Officer Kane. Tonight is the first page of a story you'll never be able to erase." Unaware of the camera recording his every word, Kane pressed harder, pushing Marcus toward a choice he could no longer avoid. Stay silent and risk losing everything, or speak the one truth that could flip the power dynamic in an instant. And in that choice lay the first twist. Kane's grip tightened on Marcus's arm, dragging him toward the back of the cruiser. The gravel crunched under their steps, each sound sharp, merciless, final. Marcus moved with the weight of the cuffs, but not with the weight of defeat. His spine remained straight, his eyes steady. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence was the loudest weapon, but silence had its limits, and tonight, silence risked becoming surrender. "Get in," Kane ordered, yanking the door open. Marcus stopped. He didn't resist. He just stopped moving. His body became an anchor in the officer's hand. Kane turned, surprised by the sudden halt, and then Marcus spoke. Slowly, calmly, his voice carrying not fear, but authority. "Do you know who I am?" Kane laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Yeah, you're the idiot dumb enough to get caught with a truck full of blow. Don't try that wrong man nonsense with me. You're finished." Marcus tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving Kane's. "No, you don't know who I am. And that's your mistake." The words landed like a riddle. Daniels shifted uneasily, the first true ripple of uncertainty flickering in his chest. He studied Marcus's face, scanning for something, anything, that explained the strange calm. Kane sneered, shoving Marcus toward the open door again. "Save the speeches. Judges don't care who you think you are." But Marcus didn't move. His eyes cut toward Daniels now, pinning him with quiet precision. "Officer Daniels," Marcus said evenly, "ask yourself this. How many men beg, cry, or fight when a bag of drugs is dropped in their lap?" Daniels frowned. "Most." "And how many stay calm, silent, patient?" Marcus's voice lowered, steady as stone. "Only one kind. The kind who knows he doesn't need to beg." For a moment the night grew heavier. Daniel's throat tightened. Kane noticed, snapping his attention to his partner. "What are you doing? Don't listen to him. He's playing you." Marcus leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper, but heavy enough to sink like lead. "My name is Marcus Reed." He let the syllables hang in the air, deliberate, loaded. "And that name carries more weight than you can imagine." Daniels blinked, recognition flickering, though faint. He had heard that name before, maybe in a briefing, maybe whispered in passing. But where? Kane scoffed. "Marcus Reed? What, am I supposed to care? You're nobody." Marcus allowed the faintest trace of a smile, controlled and deliberate. "If I'm nobody, then why are you sweating, Daniels?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged. Daniels' hand twitched near his belt, not in aggression but in unease. The dashcam light blinked again. Capturing. Waiting. Marcus straightened. "This isn't the end of my road, Officer Kane. It's the end of yours." Kane's face tightened, the first crack in his mask of arrogance. He shoved Marcus harder into the back seat, but the shove felt less certain, more desperate. And as the cruiser door slammed shut, Daniel's mind echoed with one thought. Who exactly had they just put in handcuffs? As the cruiser pulled onto the highway, Daniel's doubts deepened. The dashcam recorded faithfully, and Marcus's name lingered like an unanswered riddle. The arrest wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was a fuse, and it had just been lit. The cruiser door shut with a metallic thud, the kind that sealed more than just steel. It sealed Marcus into a cage meant for the powerless. The cuffs cut deeper into his wrists as the car jolted forward, gravel giving way to smooth asphalt. Outside, the highway stretched endlessly. Headlights carved fleeting corridors of light before swallowing them back into shadow. Inside, 3 men rode together in silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before something broke. Kane gripped the wheel, knuckles pale, jaw tight. He thought he had won. His smirk returned in flashes, but not with the same ease as before. Marcus's calm had unsettled him. No suspect should sit so still. No suspect should speak so carefully. In the rearview mirror, Kane glanced back. Marcus sat upright, eyes forward, his posture military straight. Not slouched like the guilty, not frantic like the desperate. He looked composed. Daniels noticed it too. He kept sneaking glances at Marcus through the side mirror, his unease gnawing deeper. The name, Marcus Reed, clung to him like smoke he couldn't clear. He had heard it before, somewhere that mattered. The engine hummed, the tires drummed against the road, but beneath it all, tension throbbed like a second heartbeat. Then Marcus spoke. His voice was low, steady, slicing through the air like a blade. "Tell me, Kane, do you ever think about what happens after the story you write falls apart?" Kane snorted. "What story?" Marcus leaned forward slightly, his voice gaining weight. "This one, the stop, the bag, the false report you're already rehearsing in your head. Do you ever think about what happens when the narrative slips through your fingers?" Kane's jaw tightened. "Save the speeches. Nobody's slipping anything. You're going down." But Daniel's grip on his knee tightened. He stared ahead, but Marcus's words had lodged themselves inside him. Marcus pressed on. "You've done this before, haven't you, Kane? How many men? How many lives wrecked because you thought the badge was a shield strong enough to hide your hands?" Kane slammed his palm against the wheel. "Shut up!" The car jolted slightly, tires humming louder as Kane corrected the swerve. His outburst echoed too loudly in the confined space. Marcus didn't flinch. His voice dropped to a whisper, calm, but sharper than ever. "You're not scared of me, Kane. You're scared of the truth. That's why your voice shakes every time you raise it." Daniels swallowed hard. Kane's voice had cracked. He had heard it too. For a long stretch, nobody spoke. The cruiser glided under flickering streetlights, each flash illuminating Marcus's face for a fraction of a second. Stoic, calculating, unreadable. Then Marcus shifted his gaze toward Daniels. Not Kane. Daniels. "You," Marcus said softly, almost like a confidant. "You still have a choice." Daniels' breath caught. He didn't answer, but the tension in his body betrayed him. Marcus continued. "You know this isn't right. You feel it in your chest. Every mile we drive, that weight gets heavier. Ask yourself, when this ends, whose side of history do you want to be on?" Kane snapped his head toward Daniels. "Don't listen to him. He's a manipulator. Marcus cut him off, calm, deliberate. "No, I'm a mirror. I don't show you what I create. I show you what you already are." The words hung like smoke in the confined air. Daniels gripped the door handle, knuckles white. Sweat traced down his temple. He wanted to speak, to push back, but the silence pressed harder than any argument could. Marcus leaned back slowly, letting the words settle, letting Kane stew in his anger, and Daniels drown in his doubt. The cruiser rolled on, its hum steady, its silence louder than any siren. And in the faint glow of the dash cam, the blinking red light captured every word, every glance, every fracture forming in the fragile illusion of control. The longer the car moved forward, the closer it drew to a breaking point. Marcus had planted the seeds, doubt in Daniels, rage in Kane. And when the seeds sprouted, someone would break. But who would break first? The cruiser glided under the weak glow of highway lights, each passing lamp painting the men inside in fragments. Kane's face hard with arrogance, Marcus's calm and unreadable. and Daniels caught somewhere in between, a man with two masters pulling at his conscience. The air grew heavier with every mile. No radio chatter, no casual talk. Just silence and the hum of an engine carrying three men toward something none of them fully saw. Daniels shifted in his seat. His hand tapped nervously against his thigh, an unconscious rhythm he couldn't still. He had ridden with Kane for months, watched him push lines, blur rules, flex the badge like a weapon. But never this blatant, never a bag of coke dropped like stage prop evidence, and never against a man like Marcus Reed. The name echoed louder in his mind now. Marcus Reed. Where had he heard it? A briefing? A headline? Somewhere official. Finally, Daniels broke the silence. His voice was tight, uncertain, but it cracked through like a rock against glass. Kane, maybe we should call it in. The evidence, the arrest. Do it by the book. Kane snapped his head toward him, eyes flashing. What did I tell you? I'm handling this. Don't question me. But, Daniels swallowed, his grip tightening on his knee. This doesn't feel right. Kane barked a bitter laugh. Doesn't feel right? Since when did feelings run the law? You think anyone's going to pat us on the back for letting a dealer walk because you felt something? Daniels turned his gaze forward, jaw tightening, but the conflict inside him only deepened. From the back seat, Marcus's voice cut through, low and precise. He's right, Daniels. It doesn't feel right because it isn't, and you already know it. That's your conscience talking. Ignore it now, and it won't just go away. It'll eat you alive. Kane slammed his fist against the dash. Shut him up! But Marcus didn't stop. His tone stayed calm, almost fatherly, directed only at Daniels. You're young. You still believe in what the badge should mean. That's why this bothers you. Because deep down you know if this goes on your record, you'll carry his crime, not mine. Daniels's breath grew heavier. He gripped the door handle as though he might tear it off. His chest rose and fell, his heartbeat drumming in his ears. Kane leaned closer, his voice sharp, commanding. Don't listen to him. He's playing you, Daniels. He's a hustler, a liar. He'll say whatever it takes. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locked on Daniels' reflection in the side mirror. His words, soft but unyielding, landed with precision. If I were lying, Daniels, why would I be calm? Daniels' throat tightened. He had no answer. The silence after that was unbearable. Kane's anger filled it with heat, Marcus's calm filled it with ice, and Daniels, caught in the middle, felt it splitting him open. The dashcam blinked again, recording every fracture, every tremor, every hesitation, and then Daniels whispered, almost to himself, but loud enough to change everything. Marcus Reed. Kane stiffened, his grip tightening on the wheel. What did you say? Daniels' eyes widened slightly. The name had slipped out before he could stop it. His memory had caught hold. He had heard it before. In a briefing, yes, months ago. A classified name spoken in hushed tones, connected to federal operations. Marcus saw it, the recognition dawning, the truth clawing its way to the surface. Now you remember, Marcus said, his voice steady, almost like a verdict. Daniel's hands trembled against his thighs. The car suddenly felt too small, too confined, too dangerous, and Kane, for the first time, looked not just angry, he looked afraid. The crack had opened. Daniels had spoken the name. The balance of power shifted, fragile but undeniable. And now, the question was no longer if Kane's control would break. It was when. The name hung in the air like a weapon. Marcus Reed. Daniels had spoken it, barely a whisper, but enough to tilt the ground beneath them all. The cruiser roared forward, but inside the walls of control began to crack. Kane's hands strangled the wheel, his knuckles pale, his face tightening in the mirror's glow. His arrogance was slipping, his words, his swagger, all trembling beneath the weight of that name. He barked out a laugh, but it was thin, brittle, hollow. Marcus Reed. So what? You think that means something? You think I'm supposed to be scared of a name? But his voice betrayed him. The edges wavered. Marcus leaned back, cuffs pressing into his wrists, his calm now sharper than any outburst could ever be. You should be. Because the moment Daniels remembers where he heard it, the ground you're standing on disappears. Daniels' chest rose and fell faster. The briefing flickered in his mind. Months ago, a senior agent speaking low, urgent, almost warning. Marcus Reed, if you ever hear that name in the field, remember, you're not looking at a suspect. You're looking at someone you do not touch unless you're ordered to. His throat went dry. He glanced at Kane, then at Marcus, then back at the dashcam's blinking light. Every second now felt like evidence carving itself in stone. Kane slammed his palm against the wheel again. This is garbage. He's just another thug playing mind games. Don't let him get in your head, Daniels. But Kane's own head wasn't safe anymore. The cracks were spreading. His voice had lost its certainty. His bravado sounded more like pleading. Marcus's tone dropped to a near whisper, cold and steady. You think you're in control, Kane, but control is a fragile thing. It shatters the second truth walks into the room, and the truth has already arrived. Daniels gripped the seat edge, his conscience clawing harder. Sweat rolled down his neck, his breath uneven. Kane. Daniels' voice faltered, but it came again, stronger. If he's who I think he is— Shut it! Kane snapped, his voice raw. Don't say another word! But silence could not seal what had already escaped. Daniels had spoken the name. Marcus had claimed it. And Kane could feel his grip slipping with every mile the cruiser swallowed. Marcus's eyes locked on Kane through the rearview mirror. Calm, relentless, unshaken. You feel it, don't you? The badge doesn't protect you anymore. Not from me, not from what's coming. Kane's breathing quickened. He pressed harder on the accelerator, as if speed could drown out fear. But fear doesn't die with speed. It grows. The cruiser cut through the darkness, carrying 3 men, but only one still believed he had control. And that belief was dying by the second. The dashcam blinked again, its silent record carving Kane's downfall into memory. Kane was unraveling, Daniels was wavering, and Marcus, bound in cuffs, was the calmest man in the car. The shift of power was complete, but its consequences were only beginning. Because the real question was no longer if Kane's control would break, but what Marcus would do when it did. The cruiser thundered down the empty stretch of highway, but inside the cabin, power was shifting like sand underfoot. Kane gripped the wheel tighter, as though his hands alone could hold control together. Daniel stared ahead, his conscience louder than the engine's hum, and Marcus, cuffed, contained, was the only one who seemed to command the air. He didn't shout. He didn't struggle. He didn't beg. He simply spoke. Daniels. Marcus's voice was steady, almost conversational. Do you know why you've heard my name before? Daniels didn't answer, but his throat tightened, his silence betraying him. Kane barked before he could. Don't answer him. Don't engage. He's twisting you. But Marcus continued, unbothered, each word measured like a chess move. You heard my name because it wasn't meant for men like Kane. It was meant for men like you, officers who might stumble into something larger than they realize. Daniel's fingers twitched on his knee. Marcus pressed deeper. They told you once, didn't they, that if you ever came across Marcus Reed, you weren't dealing with a suspect. You were dealing with something bigger. You remember it now. Daniel's breath caught. The memory sharpened. The briefing, the stern voice of a federal director, the warning etched into his memory like fire. Kane's voice cracked with anger. Don't listen. He's bluffing. But Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locked on Daniel's through the reflection of the mirror, calm, piercing, relentless. If I were bluffing, Daniels, why would your hands be shaking? Daniels froze. His knuckles had whitened against the seat, his grip trembling without his permission. Kane slammed the dash with his fist. Enough! I'm in charge here. But the words fell flat. Even Kane could hear the hollow echo in them. He wasn't in charge anymore. The badge on his chest was shrinking against the weight of the truth pressing down on him. Marcus's tone shifted lower, quieter, but sharper than ever. "You've made a mistake, Kane. You thought you planted evidence in a black man's truck. But you didn't plant evidence. You planted your own destruction, and the only man who doesn't see it yet is you." Kane's chest heaved, his breaths uneven. For the first time, fear gleamed behind his eyes. Daniels turned his head just slightly, looking at Marcus. And in that look, Kane saw something terrifying, loyalty beginning to slip. Marcus leaned back in his seat, his composure unshaken. His final words landed like a quiet verdict. "This isn't my arrest. It's yours." The cruiser jolted as Kane swerved slightly, his hands unsteady on the wheel. Daniel's heart pounded, his mind torn between orders and truth. And the dashcam blinked again, capturing every fracture of Kane's unraveling. Marcus had flipped the balance without lifting a finger. Kane's control was slipping fast, Daniels's loyalty was faltering, and the silent witness on the dash kept recording. But the real storm hadn't begun yet, because Marcus still hadn't revealed how high his name reached. The highway stretched ahead like a dark ribbon, headlights cutting lines into the black. Inside the cruiser, the air had thickened, heavy with tension that no amount of speed could displace. Kane's hands were tight on the wheel, jaw clenched. He had started the night confident, smug in the power of badge, gun, and authority. Now every word from Marcus gnawed at him. Every glance from Daniels reminded him that control was a fragile thing, and tonight it was slipping. Marcus spoke, calm, deliberate, almost conversational. "You've heard the name. You know it carries weight." Daniels's head snapped slightly toward Marcus, recognition and shock flickering across his face. Kane scoffed, voice tight. "Weight? What do you mean? You think a badge makes you untouchable?" Marcus's eyes never left Daniels's reflection in the mirror. "Not the badge, Kane. Influence, reach, authority that isn't measured by cuffs or street power. You've just been dealing with the wrong man." Daniels's mind raced. His fingers clenched the edge of his seat. The briefing he remembered months ago, his superiors speaking in whispers about Marcus Reed, a name linked to federal oversight, operations far beyond local jurisdiction, pressed on his memory like a hammer. Kane barked, trying to regain dominance. "I don't care what you think you are. You're under arrest. You're getting booked tonight, and nobody changes that." Marcus leaned slightly forward, voice still measured but sharp enough to cut through Kane's arrogance. "Officer Kane, do you know what happens when a local cop tries to frame an FBI director? Or even someone with connections higher than you can imagine?" Kane's knuckles whitened on the wheel. His words trembled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't test me." Marcus's voice softened, almost conversational, as if offering advice rather than issuing a threat. "I'm not testing you, Kane. I'm letting you see. Every move you make from this moment on is recorded, not just on the dash cam, but in the consequences waiting beyond this highway. One false step, and you've crossed the line from arrogance into recklessness. And I assure you, recklessness with me is not tolerated." Daniel's pulse quickened. His conscience flared, screaming at him to act, to do something. He glanced between the two men, Kane, who radiated fear masked as anger, and Marcus, who remained composed, commanding, untouchable. The dash cam blinked, every flicker a silent witness, capturing Kane's unraveling, Daniels's doubt, and Marcus's quiet assertion of power. Kane's voice cracked as he muttered, almost to himself, He's serious. That's Marcus Reed." And in that moment, the first seed of realization hit him like a punch. The local authority he relied on so blindly, his badge, his swagger, his history of intimidation, was powerless here. Marcus leaned back, hands resting calmly on his lap. "You see, Daniels, this isn't about threats. It's about truth. And the truth doesn't require shouting. It simply exists, waiting for those who think they can bend it to notice. Daniels's mind spun, his moral compass pulling him closer to Marcus with every word. Kane's control was unraveling fast, and the highway ahead seemed longer, darker, and more perilous than ever. The first hint had dropped. Marcus Reed was no ordinary man. Kane's arrogance had met its match, Daniel's conscience was awakening, and the dashcam had witnessed it all. But the real shock, the first true plot twist, was still to come. The cruiser rattled over a small rise in the highway, the night stretching endlessly around them. Inside, the air was thick with tension, unspoken truths pressing against every surface. Kane's knuckles whitened on the wheel, his chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid breaths. Daniels gripped the edge of his seat, caught between loyalty, fear, and awakening conscience. Marcus leaned back slightly, his calm unshakable, his gaze steady. "Officer Kane," Marcus said quietly, deliberately, "I think it's time you fully understand the situation you've placed yourself in." Kane's eyes narrowed. "I've had enough of your games. Speak plain, or I swear." Marcus raised a hand, halting Kane mid-threat. His voice dropped, measured, authoritative, the kind of voice that didn't ask but declared, "I am Marcus Reed, FBI Director Marcus Reed." The words struck the cabin like a thunderclap. Kane froze. The steering wheel pressed hard against his palms, but his control slipped further. His mind raced, disbelief warring with growing fear. The arrogance that had carried him through countless stops, countless arrests, now faltered under the weight of a name he had long dismissed as rumor. Daniels's jaw dropped, his conscience screaming. The briefings, the hushed warnings, the whispered name in conference rooms months ago, it all clicked. Marcus Reed was not just any agent. He was the man whose authority dwarfed the badge Kane carried. The man whose word could undo careers, arrests, and reputations with a single call. Kane's voice was a whisper, broken. "You're the FBI director?" Marcus's calm remained unshaken. "Yes, and tonight you've made several very serious mistakes. Planting evidence, attempting to frame me, underestimating who you were dealing with. All of it has consequences, serious ones." Daniel's eyes flicked between Marcus and Kane, the realization settling like ice in his veins. Kane's bluster, his anger, the false control he had wielded, it was all gone. Every threat Marcus had hinted at before was now grounded in reality. Marcus leaned forward slightly, cuffs still binding his hands, yet his presence alone commanding the space. "You see, Kane, this isn't a negotiation. This isn't a game. This is truth meeting arrogance, and I promise you, the dashcam is just the beginning." Kane's hands shook. Every ounce of confidence drained as the realization sank deeper. He had been playing with fire, thinking himself untouchable, only to sit in the back seat of a cruiser with the very man he had tried to destroy. Daniels swallowed hard. His loyalty had been tested and was now pivoting. He had a choice. Side with the local badge, now exposed as fragile, or side with the man whose reach and authority were absolute. Marcus's eyes locked on Kane's reflection in the mirror. Quiet, steady, immovable. "This is your first warning, but warnings have limits, choices have consequences, and tonight, you've chosen poorly." Kane's voice trembled. What can you... Marcus cut him off with a single word, calm yet lethal in delivery. "Everything." The dashcam's red light blinked silently, capturing Kane's unraveling, Daniel's awakening, and Marcus's quiet, unshakable dominance. Kane's world had shattered. Daniels was forced to choose sides. Marcus Reed, the man they had underestimated, now held every card. But one final twist was still coming, one that would not only test Kane and Daniels, but also reveal the full reach of Marcus's plan. The cruiser hummed through the night, but inside it felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were closing in on Kane, Every heartbeat was a drum of mounting fear. Every glance at Marcus in the rearview mirror reminded him of the truth he had ignored. Kane's hands shook on the wheel. "You can't do anything from back there. You're—" Marcus interrupted, calm, precise, almost conversational. "I can do everything from back here, Kane, and Daniels is about to help me prove it." Daniels flinched at the words, his conscience already grappling with the choice. Kane's arrogance had blinded him to one critical fact. Marcus Reed's influence stretched far beyond local jurisdiction. One call, one signal, and Kane would find himself under scrutiny, exposed, powerless. Marcus continued, each word a careful scalpel cutting Kane's illusions. "Do you see, Daniels? The dashcam doesn't just record, it broadcasts. Every move, every word, every lie, already on its way to the right offices." Daniel's eyes widened. The tiny red light blinking on the dashboard was more than a camera. It was evidence. And Marcus had orchestrated its placement long before Kane ever imagined it. Kane's voice cracked, frantic. What have you done?" Marcus smiled faintly, serene, untouchable. "Everything you thought you controlled, Kane. Every false arrest, every planted bag, every arrogant move, it's all about to be reviewed. And the man sitting silently in the back of my cruiser? He's about to determine your fate." Daniels's hands trembled. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Marcus, what do you want me to do?" Marcus leaned forward slightly, his calm a hurricane inside the small car. "Truth. Do the right thing. Speak honestly. Report what happened tonight. Don't let fear or loyalty blind you to the facts." Kane slammed his hands to the wheel, the first real tears of frustration forming in the corners of his eyes. His control was gone, shredded by Marcus's quiet authority and Daniels's wavering conscience, and then Marcus delivered the final blow, the move that sealed the twist. "Daniels, call your precinct. Tell them the truth. Tell them what you saw. And Kane, you're finished. Every report you falsified, every lie you told, is now documented, and there's no one to protect you." Kane's chest heaved. He turned toward Daniels, pleading, panicked. "No, you can't do this, don't—" But it was too late. Daniels' fingers moved toward the radio, the weight of conscience heavier than fear, heavier than loyalty. Marcus's plan had unfolded flawlessly. Kane had underestimated the man in the back seat, the quiet power of patience, preparation, and truth. The dashcam blinked, silently immortalizing the collapse. Kane's arrogance, Daniels's moral awakening, Marcus's unshakable dominance. For the first time, the highway outside didn't matter. The real journey, the one of control, power, and justice, had already been decided. Kane's world had crumbled, Daniels had chosen truth, and Marcus Reed had proven that no badge, no bluster, could shield arrogance from accountability. But the night was not over. The consequences of Kane's choices, Marcus's plan, and Daniels' moral pivot were about to reach far beyond the highway. The cruiser slowed as it approached the precinct, its headlights cutting through the thick veil of night. The night outside seemed calm, indifferent, unaware of the storm that had erupted inside this small vehicle. Inside, Kane sat slumped, a man stripped of his confidence. The bravado that had defined him for years had vanished, replaced by trembling hands and a hollow gaze. Every move he had made, every falsified report, every planted bag, every lie, had been meticulously undone in the span of one harrowing hour. Daniels sat beside him, still shaking slightly, but more grounded. The weight of truth pressed on him, heavy but liberating. He had chosen the difficult path, one that demanded courage, honesty, and moral clarity. Marcus Reed remained calm in the back seat, cuffs still binding his hands, yet completely in control. His presence radiated authority without a single raised voice. The man who Kane had believed powerless now carried the unshakable weight of truth. Marcus's voice broke the silence, steady, almost gentle. "Daniels, remember this night. Choices defined character, and the truth, once revealed, cannot be hidden again. Daniels nodded, swallowing hard. He knew the consequences Cain would face, but he also understood the quiet power Marcus wielded: patience, preparation, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Cain finally spoke, voice hoarse, broken. You can't just walk away from this, Marcus. There are consequences. You think this ends tonight?" Marcus's eyes met Cain's, calm and unwavering. "The consequences already exist, Cain. Your actions set them in motion. And I ensure they reach their proper end." The dash cam blinked silently, capturing the final moments of control, the unraveling of arrogance, and the quiet triumph of patience and truth. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the moral storm that had just passed through its streets. Inside, 3 lives had shifted irrevocably: Cain, shattered; Daniels, awakened; Marcus, victorious without a single shout. As the cruiser rolled to a stop, Marcus's final words lingered, echoing through the car like a prophecy. "Tonight proves one thing: arrogance can hide behind a badge, lies can hide behind authority, but truth always finds a way." Daniels exhaled slowly, the weight lifting but the gravity remaining. Cain avoided eye contact, knowing his world had changed forever, and Marcus, still calm, still composed, prepared to step into the next phase of his plan. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The camera blinked its last red light, capturing the scene for posterity. But the story was far from over. Questions remained. Consequences awaited. And somewhere in the dark, the ripple of one night's events began to spread further than any of them could have imagined. Cain's fall, Daniels's moral awakening, and Marcus Reed's quiet dominance left one truth undeniable: power is fragile, morality is tested, and the consequences of one night's choices can echo far beyond the confines of a single cruiser. But here's the question the night leaves you with: if you were Daniels, would you have made the same choice? Or let fear dictate your loyalty? The cruiser came to a stop outside the precinct, the red and blue lights reflecting faintly off the polished asphalt. Cain sat in silence, defeated, a man stripped bare of confidence, yet unaware of the full reach of what he had set in motion. Daniels stepped out carefully, glancing back at Marcus, whose calm demeanor remained unshaken. Marcus's voice cut through the night, measured and deliberate. "This is only the beginning. What happened tonight will ripple far beyond this street, beyond this city, and make no mistake, those ripples will touch lives you cannot yet imagine." Daniels swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He had chosen truth, but Marcus's words reminded him that every choice has consequences, some immediate, some hidden, some waiting silently to strike. Cain finally broke the silence, voice trembling, almost pleading. "You think this ends here? You think I'm done?" Marcus's eyes met his through the mirror, calm, unyielding. "No, it's far from over. The truth never ends. It only reveals itself piece by piece, and the next piece is coming." Daniel stepped back, watching as Marcus was led away, the cuffs no longer a symbol of weakness, but a quiet testament to the man's dominance. He glanced at Cain, whose arrogance had been replaced with fear, and then out at the street beyond the precinct. Something had changed, not just in them, but in the world they thought they controlled. And then Marcus spoke again, just as he was about to disappear from view. "Remember this night. Remember the choices you made. The consequences of one wrong move are never contained. Watch closely, Daniels. Watch carefully, Cain. The story doesn't end here. It only grows." The camera blinked silently, its red light capturing the final image. Marcus walking away, Daniels staring into the unknown, Cain frozen in fear, and the night stretching endlessly beyond them. The story had reached its immediate conclusion, but a shadow of questions lingered. What will happen to Cain now that his actions are exposed? How far does Marcus Reed's influence truly reach? And what choices will Daniels make in the hours, days, and weeks to come? The night held its breath, leaving the answers unspoken, the consequences unresolved, and the audience questioning. What would you have done in their place? The truth is rarely simple. Loyalty, fear, and morality collide in ways that leave no one unscathed. Comment below. If you were Daniels, would you side with the badge or the truth? Like, share, and subscribe to follow Marcus Reed's next move and see how far the ripples of one night's choices can truly reach.